information buzzing through our brains, and we will not let our hearts forget the most important thing. It's love, 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 love. It's all about love, 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 love. Everything else comes down to this. Nothing any higher on the list than love.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Let me get this focused for y'all. Okay. Hey, what's up, y'all? I know you probably didn't think that y'all would hear from me this soon, but I wanted to do like a tag that I've seen a lot of other mothers that are doing this tag called controversial parenting tag. And the reason why I wanted to do this tag is because, well, I don't really understand why they call it controversial, because I don't really think that any of these different topics are controversial. I just think that especially when you decide to become a parent, there are some different styles and there are some different things that you, I guess, styles of parenting that you would like to have your kids, you know, raise your kids a certain way, you know, and there's no right or wrong answer. Everybody has their style. Now, there are things that, you know, just go completely, you know, out of whack and too far as some parenting styles that I personally, you know, would not do or allow any of my children to be raised that way. But it's something that my husband and I have sat down once we decided to start trying to have children. We wanted to be on one accord as far as how we're going to raise them, because our number one goal in raising children is to raise a healthy, well-adjusted, productive member of society. That is our premise from the drop of a hat, aside from all this other stuff that people want to say. Now, I know there's some people who really don't know me and like, well, how can you do a controversial parenting tag and you don't have any children? Well, I'll tell you why. I do have 10 years plus of experience with raising children. I was a nanny for 11 years, and I was a nanny of 3 little girls. Their parents, the father was a musician and the mother was a flight attendant. And so if you know anything about stewardess, you know they're pretty much flying and gone, I'll say 80% of the time. And so I used to live in their home, and the kids were my responsibility. Now, when I first started keeping them, the oldest was 15 months old, the middle one was 5 months old, and then 2 years later, the youngest one came. And so I was their primary caretaker for that amount of time, and it was hard because that was my first experience with kids on a regular basis. Now, I babysat before. I've had children stay, you know, at my house over the weekend while their parents were away, but I never had like a day-to-day, every single day type interaction with kids, especially little ones. And so it was an experience, and I was able to get the hang of a lot of different things. And there are some things that I would allow, there's some things that I wouldn't allow. And the parents were really great because they gave me like open reign, you know. And so there were some things that, you know, they wanted me to do that I really didn't feel comfortable doing as far as discipline was concerned, you know, but I created, you know, a way depending on each child's specific personality, because you can't really discipline a child as a whole or as a part of one defined way. Discipline has to be catered to the personality and the ways of an individual child. So that's why I feel like I do have the experience to even speak upon, you know, parenting issues, because I was a parent, you know, regardless, I was a caregiver. So yeah. So and if you don't agree with, you know, the things that, you know, I say in my controversial parenting tag, that's quite all right. I am, you know, okay with debate. Some things I have researched And I, invite you to do the same. You don't have to agree with every single thing, but I do ask for, respect my choices. All you have to do is respect it. We're not gonna, I don't want anybody to engage in any silly arguments or anything like that, because it's not really gonna change how I view things. And so I'm speaking about experience myself with children and just my personal, how I grew up personally and how it benefited myself. So we'll start on the topics, and of course I'm going to have all of the topics that I'm going to discuss in the description box. Some topics that I did add that I felt was important, that I felt was not addressed, because in my personal opinion, I feel like most of the people on, I guess, some YouTube moms or whatever, they get like this bandwagon type attitude about certain topics and everybody agrees. And then when one person doesn't agree with the group, it's like, and it shouldn't be that way, because that's their child. That's what they want to do. Or even if it's not their child, if that's their personal preference, who are you to tell them that they're wrong? You don't have a right. You just respect it, and if you don't agree, just say, well, I don't agree, and just move on. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first topic is pro-life versus pro-choice. I am pro-choice. And I'll tell you why. I am pro-choice because I grew up with a parent that is in the medical field, and women should have the choice to choose what has been done with their body. And I've grown up hearing about like crazy stories where people were being, engaged in incest or been raped. And I personally don't feel like a person should have to carry a child to term, and have that memory of how they were conceived. And also extreme cases where there are children who have severe deformities or severe illnesses that wouldn't allow them to survive once they are born in that case. Now, I am pro-choice, I am pro-life when it comes to folks using abortion as a form of birth control. I don't agree with that. If you feel like you can't take care of a child, your partner doesn't want a child, or you can't afford, whatever the case may be, get you some birth control, get you some condoms, or just simply just keep your legs closed. Period, point, that's it. Moving on. Baby wearing. I absolutely love baby wearing. I don't see anything wrong with baby wearing. Baby wearing is easy, and it's something that has been done for centuries. I am, as you can see, African American, and so I can even go back as far as slavery days, or back in the, back in the days where women had to work. And so they had their babies. They took whatever sheets or whatever kind of cloth that they needed. They strapped that baby to their back, and they did what they had to do. And so I guess it makes the kids a lot like more close to the parent, and plus it keeps them from being all alone, so especially when they're newborny and very infanty, just little babies, and so, and even now in Africa, you see in other parts of the country, remote parts of the country, you see people, they baby wear. And so I don't think there's anything wrong. I can't stand to see people who consistently carry their kids in them infant carriers. It's like, take them out. You shouldn't confine them to the infant carrier all the time. If you can carry them, carry them. So yeah, moving on. Adoption. I love adoption. My parents adopted 2 children when I was little, and we were able to, give them a home for a short period of time, and there were some circumstances that the adoption didn't work out, but I am all for adoption because there are so many kids out there in the world who really need homes, and if the Lord would bless me with some money, I would adopt at least two children. So I am absolutely for adoption. Baby piercing. Okay, but I don't have an issue, a major issue. I don't think there's anything wrong with piercing a little girl's ears. I don't have any issue with that. Boys, that's unnecessary. strictly and utterly unnecessary. When a boy gets of age, to the age of understanding and the age of, decision making, let him choose whether or not he want to put an earring in his ear. Well, me personally, I grew up Seventh-day Adventist. And if you know anything about Seventh-day Adventists, the actual denomination and religion, we did not believe in wearing jewelry. And so I never got my ears pierced. I didn't get my ears pierced until I was 20. And that was a decision that I made for myself. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I do not believe in piercing children just haphazardly, giving them earrings in their face and all kind of crazy, stuff, that trends that people try to start. Ear piercing is fine. Now, me personally, when I have my child, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if I want to do the ear piercing thing. But I would wait until they got older. But like I said, we'll see. But I don't have any problem with anybody else doing it with their little girls. Now, a little boy, I have an issue with that. Don't pierce a little boy's ears because it's unnecessary. He ain't a girl. All right. Breast milk versus formula. Both are fine. Of course, we all know breast milk is the best, but there are certain situations where women can't breastfeed. Either they don't produce enough, or they don't produce at all, or they do have an adopted infant in which they don't have access to the breast milk, so they use formula. But in my personal case, I do prefer breast milk. But if by some weird, strange chance, God forbid, I can't breastfeed, formula is there for us to use. The Lord, had somebody, invent formula to help out. Nothing wrong with it. Kids grow up just as healthy and strong with formula. Nothing wrong with it. All right. Co-sleeping. Co-sleeping, I absolutely do not agree with co-sleeping. Co-sleeping is extremely habit forming. And I say that because once you start a child co-sleeping, it's extremely difficult to get them to stop. And I know a lot of women, a lot of parents, if they want to be honest, no. And even in my personal experience, as far as with my nephew, they started off co-sleeping for almost 1.5 years and caught hell trying to make him sleep by himself. So I don't think it's good to co-sleep with a child, because our whole premise in life is to get them to be independent at some point. You can't do that when you're coddling them like that. Now, if something happens, now when I was a kid, I would get scared and everything like that, and I stayed in my parents' bed all the time because I could watch foolishness. But in that case, I would have a problem if your child has nightmares and they get scared and stuff. Because my parents, they never told me no. Like if I would watch craziness on TV or whatever the case may be, I wake up in the middle of the night and see something that I'm scared or whatever, they would always let me sleep in the bed with them. They never had an issue with that. And so in that vein, yes, I don't have a problem with that. But it can't be like a routine type thing, because it cripples them when you do that, because then it's hard for you to break them out of that. So I don't agree with co-sleeping. Okay, let's see, public school versus private versus charter schools. Well, public school, there's nothing wrong with public school. I've been to public school and I had an experience going to private school for 1 year, because in 1993, if you want to look it up, Miami suffered a really horrible Hurricane Andrew. At that particular time, I was 9 years old during that time, and there was no school because the school was tore up. So my grandmother was able to, give my parents some money to put us in private school, because my mom didn't want us to miss an almost like half a year of school, because they had really nowhere to put the children, because we had nothing. The storm, the hurricane tore up everything. There was nothing, so, and then we didn't have electricity for a number of weeks, so we didn't have anywhere to go to school. So my mom didn't want us to didn't want us to miss school, so she was able to put us in private school, and it was cool. It was kind of it's really not a big deal, because a lot of the stuff that well, in my experience, I felt like influence-wise, public school is worse. Because the public school kids, they do all kind of crazy stuff to get away with stuff. Like, they do all kind of like sneaky stuff. You know, their parents think they're one way, but they're really another. So I learned a lot of craziness when I was in, and I was exposed to a lot of craziness when I was in private school. And so public school, you kind of expect certain things to happen because it's public school, because all walks of life go to public school. But in private school, you kind of expect a certain type of behavior, but I think the private school kids act worse than the public school kids. They really do, because they try to get over. So even if I had the money, I wouldn't put my kids in private school, because it's no different. We have wonderful public schools and even charter schools. I mean, they have wonderful programs, whatever your child, to suit your child's needs. All right, vaccinations. I am all for vaccinations. There's nothing wrong with vaccinations. Now, I do say when it comes to certain vaccinations, do your research and you decide whether or not you want to go forward with the vaccinations. You do have a choice. I do not like that the flu shot at all, because every single child that I know of that has gotten the flu shot becomes extremely ill after they get that flu shot. So no. Do your own research, come up with your own. Don't let anybody to force you to do anything you don't want to do, because in the end, you are the moderator of yourself. Nobody can force you to do anything or make your child, accept something that you don't want to. So vaccinations, yes, but for certain ones, but for the remainder of the ones that you're not familiar with or you have a question, seek, more elaboration on it before you, approve it. Medicating children. Now, I took this, a lot of people took this as giving them Tylenol and stuff like that. That is not how I see this topic. Medicating children is that kids who have certain disorders, or they're diagnosed with ADHD or whatever the case may be, and they're given these crazy drugs. Now, when it comes to medicating the child, it's up to the parent to do your research once again. Look at the side effects. All medicine has some kind of side effect. When you got a medicine that causes diarrhea, stomach bleeds, suicidal tendencies, like crazy stuff, suicidal thoughts, like you may want to think twice before you give it to your child, don't you think? So I don't agree with medicating children. Find out some natural ways to try to get them help, counseling, intense counseling, or whatever you want to do. But as far as medicating them, it's not solving the problem. All it is just, it may temporarily solve your problem, but it may create a new problem as far as the side effects are concerned. So no, I do not agree with medicating children. Now, if they are sick and they need medication to get well, then I'm all for it. All right, the cry it out method. Cry it out method, I am fully in agreement with the cry it out method because it actually does work. Now, as I told you guys before, I did have 3 children under my care for a number of years, and when they were infants, well, one in particular, the middle one, I didn't have any issues with the oldest and the youngest, but the middle one had this thing where she would just cry, cry, and cry. And for no reason. Wasn't wet, wasn't hungry, nothing. She would just cry. And I would let her cry. Because when you get to a point where there's really nothing that you can do, you just say, okay, you're not hungry, you're not wet, there's nothing physically wrong with you. And so what I would do, put her in her crib, lay her down, and leave. And eventually she would stop, and either just fall asleep, or she would just stop, and a lot of times, especially at bedtime, and that was mostly, when that issue would happen, her crying like that, it would happen when it was bedtime. And so I would just put her in her bed, and I would rock her as long as I could, put her in her bed and close the door. I would come back, I would check on her like every 10 minutes to see if she was okay and all that. But eventually, after a few weeks of doing that, she just stopped. And I was able to put her in the bed, and we're talking about an 8 to 9 month old kid, I let her cry it out for as long as, for a few weeks, and after a while she just stopped. And her mother's like, how do you get her to sleep all night? I say, you just let them cry, because there's nothing that you can do. But some parents, I can't stand to hear them cry. I can't stand to hear them cry. Well, you gotta suck it up. Because if you don't, you're not gonna get any sleep. And children are very manipulative, extremely manipulative. And they try out different things to see what your reaction is going to be. They can't speak, they can't really communicate. Their only form of communication is crying and, whatever verbal cues that they give. And so if they whimper and you come running, they say, I'll, whine a little bit, and she came, so let me whine some more and see how fast she gonna come again. Because I've had that happen. Cry a little bit, I come running. What's wrong, baby? You okay? And it's like, ha, smiles, happy, giggling, like, what you got me in this room for? You don't want nothing. And so once they realize you're not coming no more, it's like, oh no, how dare you not come when I cry? And they make, pull a fit. They have a fit. And so once you break them out of that, you're good to go. So cried out method, yes, it's good. Cloth diapering versus disposable diapers. I'm a disposable diaper person all day long because it's just easier. It's just easier, and that's as simple as that. Now, if you say, oh, you're lazy, whatever, okay, that's just your opinion. I could care less. But in my opinion, I rather disposable diapers because it's easier, especially when you're on the go. Now, in my experience with having 3 children who were just like, especially when I had the 2 who were in diapers, I didn't have time for that cloth diaper mess. I didn't have time for it. I didn't even know nothing about a cloth diaper, to be honest with you. Back then, I didn't know nothing about it. But it was just easier. Change them, throw it away, boom, go. Change them, throw it away. And because I had a 15-month-old and a 5-month-old. So I ain't got time to be trying to do the wet bag and, do this and do that. And I had, and I was cooking, cleaning. I was doing everything. I was the mama. You know what I'm saying? I was the nanny. I was a living nanny. I just wasn't taking care of children. I was taking care of the house. And so it's very, very overwhelming when you have 2 children in diapers, and then you got to wash their clothes and do this and do that. I don't have time for that. And so, with my husband and I, our first 2 children are going to be back to back. And whoever cloth diapers, more power to you. Great. You are the bomb. You are superwoman. Rah you. But in my experience, I won't do it. All right. Spanking. Spanking. All right, hey y'all, this is part 2, of course, because part 1 was just long and it just cut me off. And so I left off at spanking. And I am all for spanking, and I'll tell you why. But it does depend, like I said before, it does depend on the child. Now, discipline, in my personal opinion, is something that is like catered to a particular child. Some children, all you have to do is just look at them. Just look at them and be like, you know what I'm saying? And they'll just stop. Some kids, you'd have to talk to them and be like, look, now you're doing too much. Stop. Some children, they don't give a damn what you say. They don't care how many warnings you give them. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm just going to ignore you. And you just have to pop them. And that's all it is. In my opinion, spanking is spanking. Now, society has made spanking like some craziness. Like, they just take it so far. Like, it wasn't that serious back in the days. 50 years ago, spanking was not that serious. Now, of course, some people do take it extreme. I have experienced spanking to the extreme, and so I know that there's a fine line between spanking and beating a child. It's a huge difference. I don't find anything wrong with popping them on their behind a couple of times. There's nothing wrong with that. That's some kids, they need it. And to be honest with you, the issues that we have in our school systems nowadays would not exist if spanking, corporal punishment, still was allowed, because these kids are just out of control. They have no respect for authority. In the United States, children are so disrespectful. You go to other countries, go to China. Those kids are spanked in China. Look at the way you know, the Chinese and the Japanese and the Asian people, how they raise their kids. Those kids are disciplined. They're under control. You know, you come to the United States, you'll see a 4 or 5-year-old cursing their mama out, you know, or slapping their mama or hitting them, you know, doing crazy stuff. Oh no, and then you just see people, they just so lax about it, like, oh, he doesn't listen to me. Like, seriously, come on. You know, so I'm all for spanking, but some kids, just, it depends on the child. It depends on the child. Some kids, they need their behind popped, you know, they really do. They need it, you know. Some children you can talk to, some kids you can do timeout. I'm real big on timeout, especially when I was teaching, because timeout was just like, no, Mrs. Rupper, no, timeout, please. They would beg me not to put them in timeout. I'm like, look, you want a timeout? No. Okay, well, stop. Okay, so that was how it was. So timeout does work, you know, and spanking does work. So I'm all for spanking, but of course there is a limit and an extreme to everything, every form of discipline. Some people put folks in timeout for hours. That is ridiculous. That is, you know, you're not learning nothing. You know, you explain to the child while they're being punished, and you let them know, and you give them a chance to apologize and all that, but you explain to them why they're being punished. You just don't just be beating on kids and whooping on them and they don't know why they're being spanked, or they don't know why they're being put in timeout. But it has to be some sort of a lesson involved in it, and that comes with communicating. And so, you know, there's an extreme to all forms of discipline, and in terms of just regular corporal punishment, just spanking, simple spanking, I don't have a problem with it. I do have a problem with folks who just beat on their kids for no damn reason. Stop. You know what I'm saying? Because you're being a bully. And so that's it. Circumcision. All right, I know many of the popular YouTube mothers and all YouTube mothers alike have, you know, been really big on this issue, speaking out against it, and everybody is just up in arms about it. I personally do agree with circumcising little boys, and it irks my last nerve when people compare circumcision of a boy to that foolishness that they do in Africa. That is not the same thing. What they're doing in Africa is completely unnecessary, because the clitoris is something that we all women need. It's a part of our body that we need. The foreskin is something that is unnecessary. And we do have some parts of our body that are unnecessary. And so I did some research to give you the pros and the cons to circumcision. And of course, it all comes down to your personal decision, and it all comes down to what you're comfortable with or what not. There is no right or wrong answer, and it's the parent's choice, and they're entitled to their choice. So I'm gonna go on ahead and read you, and this is according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, okay? With men who are circumcised, of course, the hygiene is easier. It's decreased risk of urinary tract infections in their partners. It's decreased risk of STDs, decreased risk of penile cancer, and it prevents penile problems, one in which is phimosis. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Phinosis, phimosis, which is an uncircumcised foreskin that is difficult or impossible to retract. This can cause inflammation of the foreskin or the head of the penis, because there are some situations where, you know, babies are born, their foreskin is too tight and it needs to be removed, you know, in those different cases, or it's too just really like dragging, like it's long, super long. And I've seen little boys with penises where their foreskin is just, you can't even see where their penis is, and that has to be cleaned. It has to be cleaned up under there. You just can't just clean the outside of it, and you don't, just like you don't clean the outside of your vagina and don't clean inside the vulva and all the other stuff. You don't just do that. So it's easier to maintain, and it does prevent STDs as well. It doesn't prevent STDs, but it lowers the risk of STDs. Please, Lord, I don't want nobody like, oh no, I misspoke. It, lowers the risk of STDs. Okay, now, in certain cases, circumcision is not recommended if one has a blood clotting disorder. Circumcision is not appropriate for premature infants. Circumcision does not affect fertility, nor does it enhance or detract from sexual pleasure. The risk are the foreskin may be cut too short or too long. The foreskin may fail to heal properly. The remaining foreskin might reattach to the end of the penis, requiring minor surgical repair. So, in my opinion, the risk outweigh, the benefits outweigh the risk. And so I'm all for circumcising little boys. And if you're not, it's cool, So, and I already know how the procedure is performed. My nephew was circumcised. I've seen circumcision done the correct way. And of course, you have to, take your child to a doctor, And when people talk about, the pain and everything, they're required to give them anesthetic now. Because back in the day, it was different. They didn't give them any anesthetic or very little. But now, hospitals are required to give these kids anesthetic before they do the surgery. And they'll never remember the procedure. They'll never remember anything of it. And, it's beneficial. If you look at, the pros and the cons, it's very, very beneficial. All right? And so, let's see. Extended breastfeeding, long-term breastfeeding. I do not agree with extended breastfeeding. Do not agree with extended breastfeeding at all. And I say that because it creates a long-term dependence, on the parent. I am one of those people, I am a skills person, because I feel that parents who breastfeed their children, there are certain skills that you want a child to learn. I don't have a problem with a child drinking breast milk, for a long period of time, because of course it's beneficial. There's nothing in all the research that I've done on extended breastfeeding, it's nothing wrong with it. But personally, I would not breastfeed a child that is walking, period. Now, if I can breastfeed up to a year, I would. But once a child starts walking and talking, I'll pump the milk, put it in a sippy cup, and let them drink it. But as far as having them, up to the breast after a year old, no. And because it's just, no. That's just too much. You have to give them the opportunity there are certain skills they need to learn how to perfect, as far as feeding themselves, learning how to hold a cup, hold a bottle on their own. And if you're constantly breastfeeding, especially if it's in an exclusive type breastfeeding, they don't learn certain skills they need to learn. They don't learn how to grasp. Their fine motor skills are prohibited because they don't know. All they're doing is just going up to the breast, and that's it. They don't learn how to hold a cup, hold a bottle. Now, I do agree with, just like I said before, sorry for being so redundant, but I do agree with letting them have the breast milk. If you want to continue to let them drink the breast milk long term, that's great, wonderful. They won't, there's a lot of wonderful, benefits to breast milk. And so there's nothing wrong with that, because I want them, to learn how to hold their own bottle. I want them to learn how to feed themselves with their fingers, eventually transitioning to them feeding themselves with spoons and forks, and using forks and knives and stuff like that. I don't, it's disturbing to see somebody that's 5, 6, and 7, even someone that is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 years old breastfeeding. That is just ridiculous. And it's just, and then people, want to do, and I guess I'll segue into public breastfeeding. I don't have an issue with public breastfeeding, but be mindful of others, because we do live in a society where it is against the law to publicly expose yourself. Your breast, even though you're feeding your child, your breast is still considered a private part. You wouldn't walk into, the grocery store with your breast hanging out. Why would you want to, feed your child completely exposed in your breast? To me, that's not appropriate, especially if you're in public and there's little children around, there's other people around who don't want to see your titties. And it's as simple as that. I don't have a problem with people publicly breastfeeding, but cover yourself up, because your breast is still a private area, and you don't need to expose it. And you, just because you choose to breastfeed in public, you don't have to force anybody else to be. They want to enjoy their outing, without having to see your private part. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to see your exposed breast. So if you want to feed your child, they have, especially nowadays, they do have like the family restrooms where, in where I live, a lot of the malls have family restrooms where they have a nice couch area in the restroom area where you can sit down and nurse your child in private. And they do have wonderful nursing covers, wonderful receiving blankets where you can just cover yourself. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But just to completely pull out your boob and you're just breastfeeding and all of your breasts is for the whole world to see, come on, that's a bit much. So I believe you can breastfeeding a child until 1 year old is perfectly fine, but after 1 year, put it in a sippy cup and let them drink it. Nothing wrong with it. But to have a big old kid, I guess me being traumatized by seeing that. I saw a lady in church when I was like 12. She had this kid, he had to be like 3 or 4, and he just walked up to her and pulled out her breast and just started, drinking, and it was just like, why is she doing that in front of folks? You know what I'm saying? I just thought it was a little inappropriate. So yeah, that's my view on that. Room sharing. I don't have an issue with room sharing. There's nothing wrong with room sharing. In my personal experience, I have one brother, I have one sibling, and we've always had our own room. And I was a kind of faint of heart type child, and I was always scared, especially, watching TVs. I always had nightmares, and so I think I would have benefited with sleep. I used to love sleeping with my brother. I always loved sleeping in the bed with him because he would sleep like a rock, and I just felt like secure. I used to love sleeping with my parents as well because I just felt secure. I hate sleeping by myself because I used to always be scared, and we always had our own rooms, and so our kids, at least the first 2, are going to be room sharing, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. Once you have that discussion with your child about, before they even know that each other is different in certain ways, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And of course, most people can't afford a house with 10 different rooms. Most Americans, live really economically, and the average have a 2 to 3 bedroom house. And some people have 4 to 5 kids. And so, of course, every child can't have their own room. That's just how it is. That's how society is. Every child can't have their own room. So, of course, you do the bunk bed, girls on one bunk bed, the boys on another bunk bed. There's nothing wrong with it. It's quite normal. There's nothing wrong with it. So I don't have a problem with room sharing. All right. Chores and organized activities. Now, a lot of people nowadays have this thing about, don't give the children chores because they have to work hard and they just need to be children. You giving a child an organized task or a responsibility is not going to take away from their childhood in any way, shape, or form. In my personal experience, I learned how to make up my own bed when I was 4. And that's all I had to do. My mother she would do it with me every single morning, show me how to pull the sheet, tuck, pull, tuck, and that's how I learned. I learned how to tidy up my own room, had my shoes in a line, and I was responsible for my personal area. You know, my mother washed clothes and she did all that other stuff. And when we got a little older, she taught us how to sort clothes. The whites go here, the colors go here, the lights go here, the darks go here. I learned how to sort clothes. She would never let us wash it, but we would sort them. And we did that for years until we were like in high school. Then we had to wash our own clothes, but we already knew what to do because we knew how to sort. Once you know how to sort, and you just know how many cups of this and that to put in, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because again, our main objective when raising children is to raise them to be productive members of society. I have seen a lot of young people whose parents just did everything for them, and when they became of age, they just expected stuff to just be done for them. For example, I used to work with this young girl. She was like 19 years old, and she would always come to work really beautifully dressed and always had her clothes looking nice. One day she came to work looking like a homeless person, just straight up raggedy. And so I was just like, why you look like that today? Oh, my mom didn't wash clothes. How old are you, dear? Oh, I'm 19. Why does your mother still wash her clothes? Oh, because I don't know how to wash my clothes. What the hell? Girl, you're 19. You're going to be out your mama's house in a few, like, you ain't going to be living there forever unless you want to. But some people, they just choose to live with their mom and daddy's forever. But that's crazy. That is insanely crazy for somebody that is an adult that don't know how to just simply sort and put their clothes in the wash machine and wash them. You know what I'm saying? And even, you don't even have to be a culinary chef, but just know how to make simple meals. You know, we were taught how to, I can cook, but we were taught how to clean house, especially me, because my mother was like, no man wants a woman who can't clean house, can't cook or clean house or take care of herself. No man wants that, you know. And nowadays, I guess we have this generation of entitled people who just feel like they don't have to do jack. You know, they don't have to cook, they don't have to clean, they don't have to do nothing. You know what I mean? And eating out is extremely expensive. You know, it's extremely expensive, and it don't, you know, fare kindly on the waist either. So it's in one's best interest, and you don't have to make them do so much. At different stages of development or at different age groups, you know, you introduce certain things, and you continue to, you know, make that a requirement so that they'll learn how to do it. And then once they get older, once you feel that they can understand and they can perform certain tasks, then you just move on to the next. You know, first you teach them how to clean up, and that's how I used to do when I had my preschool class. We have the cleanup song, clean up, everybody, and it was a routine every single day, routine. It was a routine, and so they knew that once we're done playing with our toys, we put them away. We don't leave them out. When we get ready for nap time, we take off our shoes and we tuck them under our little mats. We don't have shoes flying around. We don't have our clothes flying. You know what I'm saying? You have to teach them that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, I really do believe that, you know, a lot of the generation that's coming up now, they're going to be extremely dependent on folk. You know, because their parents are not preparing them. They're so busy trying to coddle them. I mean, and baby them, you know, with the co-sleeping, with the extended breastfeeding until they're 3, 4, and 5, you know, and then not requiring them to have any discipline. And whether or not you want to admit it, kids do thrive off of structure and discipline. I'm an extremely structured individual because I was raised in a structured and disciplined environment. You know, every day we had a day to do this and a day to do that, you know. And so that's just how I was raised, you know. And so there are certain things that I do. I have a day to clean this. I have a day to do that. This day I wash. This day I dust. This day I sweep and mop. This day I scrub the bathroom. And it just works, you know what I mean? And it keeps your house, you know, relatively clean, you know. Because it's embarrassing when you come into the house and you see, you know, especially teenagers, you know, their room is a hot mess and all kind of stuff, and it's just like, you don't require your child to clean up behind themselves. Oh no, let their room be nasty. Oh no. Because one thing I am extremely afraid of is creepy crawlers. I do not like roaches. I do not like spiders. I do not like rats and all kind of other crazy stuff. So I have to keep my house clean. If I see a roach, I promise you, nobody will sleep until I find it and I get it out of my house. And so I'm constantly cleaning. Hey y'all, part 3. I'm so sorry. And so as I was saying before, I'm constantly cleaning. I'm not saying that everybody has to be a neat freak or, OCD-ish and have everything in its proper place. You don't have to, but just, nobody wants to walk into your house and it's stankin' nasty. And so if you set the foundation when they're young on how to clean up after themselves, they don't become so dependent on others. Now, some people, they just don't care for washing clothes and they pay folk to do it. That's quite all right. If you don't have time to do it or you just don't choose to like to do it, then cool. If you got the money to pay somebody to do it, hell, do it. If I had the money to pay somebody, I would pay somebody to wash clothes and tidy up or whatever. But yeah, we all aren't rolling like that. So we do have to keep learn how to keep our personal space, decent, decently. And so, I do feel very, very sorry for a lot of the children that are growing up nowadays because their parents are coddling them, to the point where when they get out in the real world, they're going to be completely shocked. Because let me tell you something, and it's true, so true, the world is not going to treat your child like you do. When your child gets in high school and in college, they're expected to behave and to be a certain way. And nobody's going to put up with a lot of unnecessary foolishness. And nobody's going to coddle your child but you. So if you have this thing where you want to coddle them and you want them to bond for a number of years, and children, are bonded pretty much, for the first year or two, they've bonded successfully. So, to have that where you just feel like they haven't bonded enough, so you're just gonna do everything for them and keep them as childlike and as infantile as possible, you're doing them a disservice. Because once they come up to the age of understanding, they're gonna be in for a rude awakening when they go out in society, and people are gonna be like, look, you gotta clean up behind yourself. Because most kids, especially when they go off to college, they have roommates. And you don't want to deal with a kid who they get culture shock because they've been under mommy and daddy's wing for so long. Mommy and daddy never disciplined them. Mommy and daddy never required anything of them, just to eat, sleep, and be. So when they get out on their own, they're completely ill-equipped to function, And so, I don't feel that any of my views are extreme. There are certain things where people, all they discuss are the extreme cases of every single thing. I try to, discuss like the pros and cons, and, I just don't outright disagree on any one topic. I try to be well-rounded in my thinking, and of course some things, may change once I do become a mother of my own child. Some things may change, and I'll share how some things have changed, if you guys are interested in, wanting to know. Some things, of course, may change. My views on things may change once I do, but in my, experience with children for the past 15 plus years, for a long time, I know what works. And even how I was raised, there are certain things that were done that I didn't agree with, that I would never do, with my children. There were some, different things that I just don't agree with and I won't do. There are some things that I do agree with and I will incorporate when I raise, in raising of my children. And so I think that we all have to just be mindful of certain things. And if you don't know, ask. And don't just, rely on the internet or books. Talk to an older person. Talk to a grandmama, because that's who gonna tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. We get so caught up on Google and Bing. We get all of our parenting advice from Google and Bing, and that's not, experience to me is the best teacher. Grandparents, older people They are walking encyclopedias. They are the Google and they are the Bing because they know what works. And so nowadays it's like things are completely different. Every single thing is like deemed controversial. I'm just naming this, controversial parenting tag because that's the vein that it was, created or whatnot. But as far as these, particular topics that I've discussed, I don't find them controversial at all. You know what I'm saying? What's controversial is like the extremeness, when people are, doing certain things in its severe extreme. That's when it becomes controversial. But certain things that were normal forms of parenting for the past 50 years, and then just in the last, I guess you can say, 10 years, everybody is now like, oh no, don't spank them. Oh no, don't give them any responsibility. Let them be children. Yeah, you're not, stopping them from being kids, but you want to prepare them in life. You want to prepare them because, trust me, it's a bad world out there, and nobody is going to have any sympathy for your kid. Nobody's going to care. They need to know what it's going to be like, because I was, really, really sheltered in a lot of ways, and I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, and so I want to, and you can't prepare them for every little thing, but they need to have a, really good idea of what is expected of them, because just like I said before, nobody is going to treat your child the way that you're going to treat them. So it's best to just, and the whole point that I'm just trying to make is just, raise productive members of society. Whatever way you feel you can do that, whatever you agree, that's best, you do it. You do it. It's quite up to you. Folks don't have to agree with your style of parenting, but they have to respect it. And if they don't, then that's on them. That's their issue. It's not your issue. And just like I said, some of you may be up in arms about what I've said. Some of you may completely disagree with, but just respect it. You don't have to agree. And that's what makes us all individuals. How boring would it be if we all agreed on everything? The world would be a very boring place, And so it's healthy and it's beneficial for us to all have different opinions and different ways of doing things. That's what makes, us a different and unique people. So I hope you guys enjoyed my parenting tag. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, keep it respectful. If it's disrespectful in any way, I will ignore you completely. I don't engage in unnecessary banter. So, yeah, so thank you for viewing, seeing, taking your little time out of your day. Sorry it took so long, but it's a long list of stuff, and I added a couple of things to that list that I thought were important. So you enjoy the rest of your week and the rest of your weekend, and I will be back on Monday to discuss the cycle and everything. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and Merry Christmas if I don't see you before then. God's willing, life lasts. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Peace.